and this is the size paper I'm going to be working with. And you need your Sharpie, or again, if you don't have it, pen works just fine. And we're actually gonna be starting off with making our pumpkin shape first. We're not gonna be using this just yet, and I know you guys don't have this sheet at home, so we'll be looking off of mine. But before we start with those Zentangle patterns, we're gonna make our pumpkin shape. So the way I start with my pumpkin shape is kind of close to the top, not so much up here. Oh, hold on, I have one person waiting. So the first step when making our pumpkins is I'm actually going to make a dot pretty close to the top, but I want to leave enough space so I can make my pumpkin stem later on, last step. So just make a small little tiny dot so you know where the middle of your pumpkin is going to begin. And directly beneath that, really close to the bottom, again, not all the way to the bottom, I'm not going to do a dot. I actually want to make each little part of my pumpkin pretty thick. So I'm going to make a slight curve, kind of like that. So a dot on the top, a slight curve at the bottom. And I'm going to do my curve, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to do it 2 more times on each side. So 1 more curve, and another curve, and then 2 more on my other side. And I'm just gonna thicken it up a little bit so that'll pop out a lot more than when I'm doing my patterns on the inside that are gonna be pretty thin. So I've got my dot and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 curves at the bottom. I'm gonna use my Sharpie to go to the top of my dot and connect it all the way down to each little tip. So make sure you're connecting it from the dot, do a slight curve and touch that tip. Same on the other side, you're touching that tip. And you're always using that same dot to go to. But I'm not a big fan of the shape of it as of now. So instead of doing another curve at the bottom, I'm gonna start again at that top where that dot was, and I'm gonna connect it all the way down to the tip of those edges on each side. So if you wanna watch me first, so I'm gonna go to the dot, all the way to the side, and stop right there. But you still want it big enough so you have space in each little segment. And if you're satisfied and happy with your pumpkin shape, you can leave it that way. And we'll probably not be able to finish all of this today. And I'm actually gonna add 1 more section because I'm not a huge fan of the shape, like how it's still a lot of space over here. So I'm gonna add 1 more segment. There, now I have my funky, very lopsided pumpkin. And that's the shape for right now. I'm gonna go in and add my stem. And I'm gonna go pretty slow for those who need to catch up. So I want my stem fat enough so I'm able to add a pattern in there when we get to our Zentangle part. And to make my pumpkin cute, I'm just gonna add a detail of the vine starting at the top and do like a swirl going off the page. I'll do a couple of those. And that's our basic pumpkin shape. So get up until that point. I'm actually gonna go back and make all of my lines a little thicker, more bold, just so that those black lines really pop out. And from here, when you're satisfied with how your pumpkin looks, we're gonna start going in and adding our patterns. Now you can use the same Sharpie you have if you did use a Sharpie. And actually, for when you start adding your patterns, if you have a skinnier tip Sharpie, I would suggest that, or even like one of the students is using pen, I would even use pen, because it's nicer when the patterns inside your pumpkin are skinnier than your outline of your pumpkin. So use either a pen, or if you have at home a really skinny tip Sharpie. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit. And at this part of your pumpkin, you're gonna start adding your patterns. And what Zentangles are, when we did them last year, Zentangles is supposed to be a relaxing, therapeutic way of doing patterns. So each of these little boxes is an example of a different type of Zentangle pattern. So there's no right or wrong way to do a Zentangle. They're basically just a bunch of lines and patterns, but it's not a picture of anything specific. So I know this one kind of looks like a flower. There's a bunch of zigzags and circles. A lot of spirals too are pretty cool. You just find whichever pattern you like best, and you're gonna start filling up each of these little sections with a different Zentangle pattern. If you want to follow along with me and do the same pattern I'm doing, you're more than welcome to, but you don't have to. If you want to just dive in and do your own pattern, that's fine. Just make sure you're doing each one differently, and I'm also going to have this up if you need this for inspiration to look at a different pattern. We've got 5 minutes, so we're definitely not going to finish these today. We'll use today and Thursday to finish these patterns, because I really want you guys to take your time. The whole point of Zentangles is it's supposed to be very calming and it's not supposed to be rushed. So in 5 minutes, I'm going to try my best to get these first middle 2 done. And I'm going to start off with this kind of zigzag heartbeat pattern right there. So you're filling up your whole paper the best you can. And again, it's not supposed to be rushed. The whole purpose of this is if you're stressed out or if you need something calming, Zentangles are supposed to do that. It's a therapeutic form and it's very spiritual, and a lot of artists will do this as a calming technique. And you're gonna go until your whole pumpkin section is filled in. And as you can see, it doesn't even have to be perfect. I can go in and add more sections to it. This is just how I want my pumpkin to look. As long as we all have our nice pumpkin shape, your patterns don't have to be exactly perfect, nor are they all going to be the same. We have about 3 minutes. Again, try to fill it up the best you can. You don't want to leave too much space inside each little section. You don't want too much negative white space. And it's actually, I find it very fun trying to come up with different patterns. And it can be a little hard and tricky sometimes coming up with new ones that you don't see on an example sheet. Like when we had last year we came up with our own patterns, and that was probably the hardest part for me, because I'm more of a visual person. I like being able to see an example and work from there. Two more minutes and we can share if you guys will have any questions. Again, we're going to keep working on these on Thursday. So I have that one. My next one I'm going to do these kind of all over the place points. From one end all the way to the other. Again, if you guys need to rewatch again how I made the pumpkin shape, I'll have the video up too today. Okay, and I'm gonna stop right there. I finished my first two little sections, and it's not perfect, but I'll keep working on this on Thursday. And on Thursday, we'll also finish this up.